Hey everyone, welcome back to AI.Divine Insights. Today, we're going deep, like really deep. All right, let's jump into another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at Exodus, chapter 6.
Ooh, Exodus.
Yeah, we're going to be exploring a pretty important part of this story today where
Okay.
God reaffirms that he's going to free the Israelites from Egypt. And we also get this really detailed look at
Oh, cool.
Moses and Aaron's family tree.
Okay.
Right off the bat, one of the things that I found interesting is
Yeah.
how God really emphasizes his power,
Mm-hmm.
and the covenant that he made with the Israelites.
Right.
And then there's also that whole thing about Moses and his quote-unquote uncircumcised lips.
Oh, yeah, that's a weird one. What's that all about?
I don't know. I'm curious to hear your take on that.
Yeah, that definitely jumps out at you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You read that. It's a pretty powerful metaphor.
Yeah.
But we'll unpack that in a bit.
Okay.
But first, I think to really appreciate what's happening in this chapter,
Yeah.
it kind of helps to think about where we are
Okay.
in the overall Exodus story.
Okay. Yeah.
So, the Israelites, they've been enslaved in Egypt for generations.
Right.
And things aren't looking so good,
Yeah, not great.
pretty bleak. Like Moses, he just had his first encounter with God,
Right.
who's given him this
Big job.
pretty monumental task of going to Pharaoh and demanding that he let his people go.
Yeah. Talk about pressure.
Right.
No wonder Moses is maybe feeling a little hesitant.
Yeah.
Speaking of pressure, God actually reveals his name to Moses and the Israelites.
Yeah.
YHWH, traditionally Jehovah.
Right.
That seems like a pretty significant moment, doesn't it?
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's a huge moment.
What's the significance of that?
Well, the Israelites, they wouldn't have known God by this specific name before this.
Oh, interesting.
So this is totally new. This
Wow.
is like a brand new revelation.
Wow.
Things are about to seriously change.
Okay.
But by revealing his name,
Uh-huh.
God's showing that he has this, personal connection
Yeah.
to the Israelites. It's not just some far-off deity.
Right.
This is a God who's, entering into this covenant relationship
Right.
with his people.
Okay, so it's about, like, establishing a much deeper relationship,
Yeah.
right? A bond based on, like, mutual quest,
Yeah,
an
exactly.
obligation.
Exactly.
And you mentioned covenant.
Yeah.
Can you explain that a bit more? What does that mean in this context?
Yeah. So a covenant,
Yeah.
it's not just like an agreement, right?
Yeah,
It's like a sacred promise.
Okay.
It's a binding oath
Okay.
between God
Uh-huh.
and his chosen people.
Okay.
And this covenant, it's really important, like
Yeah.
it's central to the whole Exodus narrative,
Okay.
right? It shows God's commitment to
Free the Israelites.
liberate them,
Yeah.
establish them as his nation.
Okay.
And in a way, you could say it lays the foundation for their whole identity as a people.
Wow.
You know?
So it's not just about, like, physical freedom.
No.
It's about a spiritual bond.
It's way deeper.
Yeah, like a shared identity
Uh-huh.
forged through this covenant.
Exactly.
That's pretty profound. Now,
Yeah.
there's another part in this chapter that kind of, at first I thought was a little random.
Okay.
Why is there such a detailed family tree
Yeah.
for Moses and Aaron?
Right.
It seems like a lot of names.
It's a lot of names. It's hard to keep track of.
Yeah, to keep track of.
But those names, they actually hold a lot of significance.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Think of it this way. Back then, they didn't have birth certificates
Right.
or, social security numbers.
Right.
Lineage was everything.
Right.
It established your identity, your legitimacy,
Right.
your place in society.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So this detailed genealogy, it's not just some kind of historical record.
Right.
It actually serves some key purposes.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me more. What are some of those purposes?
All right. Well, first and foremost, it links Moses and Aaron back to some, key figures like Levi,
Uh-huh.
Reuben, Simeon.
Okay.
And this establishes their credibility within the Israelite community.
Right, because they're about to go on this huge journey
Yeah, exactly.
to lead their people to freedom.
Exactly. They're going to need some.
Yeah. Yeah, like street cred.
They got to have that street cred.
Yeah.
So
showing that they're not just some random guys
right.
coming off the street.
Exactly.
If
Exactly.
they're from this line of respected ancestors.
Yeah.
But there's got to be more to it than that. Huh?
Yeah, there's more to it than that.
Okay.
So the genealogy also highlights their connection to Levi,
Okay.
who is the tribe that the priests would come from later on.
Oh, okay.
So this kind of foreshadows the role
Okay.
that Moses and Aaron will play in establishing the priesthood
Okay.
and the religious practices of Israel.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's kind of like laying the groundwork
It's all
up to the
connected.
future of the Israelite faith. Yeah, it's all connected.
Yeah.
This deep dive is already revealing so many layers I hadn't even thought of before.
Yeah.
But I do have one question.
Okay.
There is one detail that's, well, a little surprising to me.
All right.
It says that Amram, Moses' father,
Right.
married his aunt, Joped.
Oh, yeah.
Was that common back then?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's easy to look at that and be like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah, through our modern lens, it's a little
Yeah.
jarring.
It's a little jarring, but we got to remember, marriage customs were super difficult back then.
Right.
Unions like that weren't
Yeah.
really considered that unusual
Okay.
or taboo back then. In fact, marrying within the family
Yeah.
was pretty common in some cultures.
Okay.
Sometimes it was a way to keep the family line going
Okay.
or to, consolidate power and influence.
Right, keep it all in the family.
Keep it in the family, exactly.
Okay, so we can't impose, like, our modern values on the past.
No, you got to understand the historical context.
Yeah,
You know?
it's all about understanding the historical context.
Exactly.
This is fascinating.
Yeah.
It's like peeling back the layers of history
Yeah, it's fun.
and getting a glimpse into this completely different way of life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what's so cool about diving deep
Yeah.
into these ancient texts, right? It really challenges us.
Yeah.
It helps us, broaden our understanding of the
Mhm.
past.
Right.
But this is just the beginning. We've only just scratched the surface here.
I can't wait to see other insights we uncover. But before we go any further,
Yeah.
let's take a moment to let all of this sink in. Think about what we've discussed so far.
Yeah.
God's reaffirmed promise, the significance of his revealed name,
Right.
that powerful covenant he made with his people,
Uh-huh.
and the importance of Moses and Aaron's lineage. What stands out to you?
Yeah.
What resonates with your own experiences? We'll be back in a moment to explore the next layer of this fascinating passage.
Sounds good.
Welcome back. It's amazing how much we've uncovered so far in this deep dive.
Right.
It's amazing how just this one single passage
Yeah.
can hold so much
Uh-huh.
depth and complexity.
Yeah.
I'm ready to dig in some more.
Okay.
Where should we go next?
Well, we were talking about Moses, feeling a little intimidated by the task ahead of him.
Right.
And remember that phrase, uncircumcised lips?
Yeah.
I think that's a really
Striking.
metaphor.
Yeah.
That really shows just how inadequate he's feeling.
It really paints a picture
Yeah.
in your mind. You really get the sense that Moses is feeling,
Overwhelmed.
overwhelmed. Like, God, I'm not a public speaker.
Right.
How am I supposed to stand up to Pharaoh?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a very human response.
Yeah.
And we've all been there, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
That feeling of not being good enough.
Yeah.
Not having the skills or
Or
experience
Yeah.
to do what you feel called to do.
Whether it's like a big presentation at work
Right.
or even just speaking up in a meeting sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those uncircumcised lips can hold us back.
And that's what's so powerful about this story.
Okay.
It reminds us that, God doesn't always choose the most qualified.
Right.
Or, the most eloquent people.
Right.
He chooses people who are willing to surrender to their limitations
Uh-huh.
and allow him to work for them.
It's like he's saying your weaknesses
Yeah.
don't disqualify you.
Exactly.
I can use them to show my strength.
Right.
But, I mean, wouldn't it have been easier
Yeah.
for everyone involved
Right.
if God had just chosen someone
Yeah.
who was already a great orator? Like, what if Moses was just like
Right.
a smooth talker?
Yeah. What if he could,
Yeah.
talk his way out of anything?
Yeah, he probably could have gotten anything he wanted from Pharaoh.
Maybe. But then the story wouldn't be about God's power, would it?
Right.
It would be about human ability.
Okay.
And that's not really the message
Right.
God's trying to get across here.
Yeah.
He wants to show that he can do anything,
Uh-huh.
even through people who don't feel adequate.
So it's about trusting
Yeah.
in God's strength
Trusting God.
rather than relying
Yeah.
on our own perceived
Exactly.
abilities.
Yeah.
This reminds me of some other stories in the Bible
Okay.
where God chooses the underdog,
Right.
the unexpected hero.
Yeah.
David and Goliath,
Yep.
Gideon and his tiny little army,
Yeah.
defeating the Midianites. It seems like a pretty common theme.
It is a common theme
Yeah.
throughout Scripture.
Mm-hmm.
God loves using ordinary people
Yeah.
to do incredible things.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that
Yeah.
our perceived weaknesses, they don't define us.
They don't define us. Exactly. God's grace is enough.
Yeah,
You know.
that's an encouraging message,
Yeah.
especially in a world that's constantly telling us we need to be perfect,
Right.
that we need to have it all figured out.
Yeah.
It's nice to know that God can use us
Yeah,
just as we are.
as we are.
Uncircumcised lips and all.
Exactly. And speaking of messy realities,
Okay.
let's go back to that interesting detail in the genealogy
Okay.
about, Amram marrying his aunt Jobed. We talked about the historical context, but I think there's something, a little bit deeper here too.
You mean beyond the fact that
Well, yeah.
family reunions must have been a little awkward?
Yeah, maybe a little awkward,
Yeah.
but I think this also shows us
Okay.
that even these, really sacred stories,
Yeah.
they're rooted in these complex and sometimes messy
Yeah.
human relationships.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
We do not idealize
Then the-
biblical figures,
Yeah.
but we're real people.
They were real people.
They had flaws and imperfections.
They had problems. Yeah.
Just like us.
Just like us. And that's what makes the Bible so relatable, so human.
Right.
It doesn't shy away from the hard stuff,
Right.
the uncomfortable parts of life.
Right.
It gives us this honest picture
Yeah.
of what it means to be human,
Yeah.
warts and all. And even within that,
Yeah.
messy reality,
Mm-hmm.
we see that extraordinary power
Yeah.
of God's grace and redemption.
It's like a tapestry,
Yeah.
right? Woven with both light
Uh-huh.
and shadow.
Yeah.
The imperfections don't take away from the story.
Yeah.
They make it better.
They make it better. They make it real.
Yeah. And they make the message
Yeah.
of God's love and faithfulness
Mm-hmm.
even more powerful. It's a reminder
Yeah.
that God doesn't need us to be perfect
No.
before he can work through us.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
It's a really good reminder.
Yeah.
I think that's a really powerful message for all of us.
It is.
Think about your own life. What uncircumcised lips
Right.
are you letting limit your potential?
Yeah.
What dreams are you putting on hold?
Right.
Because you just don't feel adequate.
Yeah, those are good questions.
It's a challenge, right?
It is.
To stop letting fear and self-doubt
Yeah.
dictate our actions.
Right.
But it's also really reassuring to know that God can equip us
Yes.
for whatever he's calling us to do.
He can. And you know what?
Yeah.
That equipment, it may not look how we expect it to.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
It might come in the form of challenges,
Oh.
experiences that really stretch us.
Yeah.
Or even moments where we feel really vulnerable.
Right.
That
Yeah.
show us that we need God's grace.
Yeah.
You
This is making me really rethink my definition
Yeah,
of qualifying.
right.
Maybe it's not about having all the answers
Right.
or presenting this, perfect, polished
Yeah, exactly.
image to the world.
Exactly.
Maybe it's just about being open
Yeah.
to God working in our lives,
Yeah.
even when it feels messy.
Even when it's messy, even when it's uncomfortable.
That's a really beautiful way to
Yeah,
put it.
it is.
And speaking of messy and uncomfortable,
Yeah.
there's another interesting little detail in
Okay.
this passage that I think really speaks to that.
All right.
Remember that genealogy we were talking about before?
Uh-huh.
Well, there's something about it that
Uh-huh.
people often overlook,
Yeah.
but it's really important.
Okay.
It's the fact that it includes certain women
Oh,
in
yeah.
the lineage.
Yeah.
Now, you might think that's no big deal,
Right.
but, back in those ancient patriarchal societies,
Right.
genealogies usually only focused on men.
Yeah.
Women were seen as kind of secondary,
Yeah.
you know,
Like invisible.
yeah, invisible.
Yeah.
So the fact that there are certain women
Right. Yeah.
named in Moses and Aaron's genealogy,
Yeah.
that's really unusual.
It is.
Yeah.
And it says a lot about how important women are
Yeah.
in God's plan, even in a culture that often marginalized them.
Wow. I never even thought about it that way.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
What a fascinating detail to find.
Yeah.
It's like discovering a hidden gem in the text.
Yeah, and there are so many gems like that.
I bet.
Just waiting to be discovered when we really spend some time
Yeah.
in scripture,
Yeah. Yeah.
But before we go too far,
Okay.
let's give our listener a moment
Yeah.
to think about this,
Uh-huh.
What are your thoughts on this? What connections are you making to your own life?
Yeah, that's a great question.
We'll be back in just a minute.
Yep.
To wrap up this dive into Exodus, chapter 6.
Sounds good. Welcome back to our deep dive into Exodus chapter 6. It's amazing how much we've unpacked already. We've looked at God's promise of freedom, the significance of his name,
Uh-huh.
the complexities of lineage and family history.
Right.
It's like we've been on this whirlwind tour
Yeah.
of ancient Israelite culture.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
And we're not even done yet.
Yeah. There's more to come. Yeah.
It really is amazing how, even though this story is thousands of years old,
Yeah.
it can still speak to us today. Yeah.
It's incredible, isn't it, how these ancient texts
Yeah.
just speak so clearly
Yeah.
to our modern lives.
Yeah.
The themes of inadequacy, but
Yeah.
God's grace.
Yeah.
And just the messiness of being human.
Yeah.
It's something that we can all relate to. No
Absolutely.
matter who you are.
It's like we're looking in a mirror,
Yeah.
even though this story is so old.
Yeah.
I'm really struck
Yeah.
by that idea that, God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite takeaways from this. It's
Yeah.
a good one.
It's a good one. And it's a really powerful reminder that we don't need to have it all figured out
Right.
before we can step into our purpose.
No, you don't. And I think a lot of people need to hear that,
Yeah.
especially these days.
Yeah.
We're constantly being told, you got to achieve this. You got to be perfect.
Right. Yeah. You got to be the best.
You got to be the best. It's so easy to get caught up
Yeah.
in comparing yourself
Yeah.
to everyone else and
Yeah.
feeling like you're not enough.
Yeah.
Like I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I
Yeah.
don't have enough experience
Yeah.
to make a difference.
We get so focused on what we think our limitations are
Yes.
that we miss out on the opportunities that are right in front of us.
Yes, exactly.
We let those uncircumcised lips,
Yes. Right.
that feeling that we're inadequate,
Yeah.
hold us back
Yeah.
from doing what we're meant to do.
Exactly. And it's funny because even Moses,
Right.
who, becomes this incredible leader,
Yeah.
one of the most influential people in history,
Right.
even he struggled
Yeah.
with feeling inadequate at first.
But God saw something in him,
He did, yeah. A willingness to, surrender those limitations.
Yes.
And trust in God.
That's it. It's almost like God is saying, don't worry about being perfect.
Yeah.
I can work with you.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's so freeing.
It is freeing. It takes all that pressure off
It does.
of feeling like you have to have it all together.
You don't.
And it gives us that courage to take a risk,
Right.
even when we're feeling a little afraid.
Exactly. It's about shifting our focus,
Yeah.
from our own little limitations
Right.
to the bigger picture, to God's grace. It's
Yep.
about saying yes,
Yeah.
even when it feels scary,
Yeah.
and trusting that He'll give us what we need
Yeah.
to do what He's calling us to do.
This has really made me think about
Yeah.
what my own uncircumcised lips are.
That's a good question.
Yeah. Where am I holding back in my own life?
Yeah.
Because I'm afraid of failing
Yeah.
or not measuring up.
Right. What dreams am I putting on the back burner
Yeah.
because I don't think I'm good enough?
Yeah, those are really powerful
Yeah.
questions for all of us to consider.
Yeah. What are we holding on to
Yeah.
that's keeping us from really living out
Yeah.
God's plan for our lives? What if we actually took that step of faith
Yeah.
and trusted that God's grace would be enough
Yeah.
no matter what?
Yeah.
You know?
And maybe those things that we think are our weaknesses
Right.
could actually be what God uses
Yeah.
to do his greatest work.
I love that.
It's
That's powerful.
It's in those moments where we're feeling vulnerable,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
we surrender, that
Uh-huh.
maybe we discover
Yeah.
our true strength
Yeah.
and purpose.
And purpose. So that's a beautiful thought. And I think it's a great way to wrap up our
Yeah.
deep dive into Exodus chapter 6.
This passage isn't just some story from the past.
No.
It's a message of hope,
It is.
a message of empowerment.
It
It's a
is.
reminder that God doesn't always choose
Right.
who we expect,
Right.
but that he always equips us
Yeah.
for what he's calling us to do.
That's it.
And that he can do amazing things for
Yeah.
anyone
Uh-huh.
who is willing to say yes.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us on this journey.
Yeah. Thanks for being here.
I hope you've been inspired to think about your own uncircumcised lips,
Yeah.
those areas where you might be holding back a little.
Yeah.
Embrace the mess. Step
Yeah.
into your purpose.
Yeah.
And trust God.
Trust
He'll
God.
guide you every step of the way.
Yeah.
We'll see you on our next deep dive.
See you then. Also, please like and subscribe to AI.Divine Insights for daily podcast episodes.
See you next time.